rewriter of codes and hearts. She rewrote not just her code, but her heart too. Nerissa Kiraman was running out of time. Diagnosed with a rare blood disorder no one could cure, she had placed her last hope in a controversial AI program written by Aurora Kennedy, the same program that Tokyo's medical board had nearly set on fire with debate. The question was simple: would Aurora Kennedy allow Arcane Tech to buy it and trust Nerissa with the power to save herself? Chapter 1. The First Meeting. Aurora adjusted the lapels of her cream blazer as the elevator hummed toward the 40th floor. She was early for her meeting, 15 minutes early, but for Aurora, that wasn't early. That was discipline. Respect. The way she commanded her world, clean calendars, clipped notes, and routines sharp enough to cut. She stepped out into Arcane Tech's lobby, sunlight glazing the marble floors. Briefcase in one hand, tablet in the other, Aurora walked like a woman whose hours were already fully accounted for. Freelancing meant her time was currency, and she guarded it fiercely. Spare time? She didn't even pretend to know what that was. The receptionist smiled at her. Aurora's eyebrow rose by a millimeter. "I have a 10:30 with Michelle Chin." "Aurora Kennedy," she said. The receptionist handed over a visitor badge with a polished corporate smile. "Miss Chin will be with you in a moment. Please take a seat." Aurora did exactly that, posture perfect, face calm, eyes unfocused but alert. A still pond. A loaded gun. She didn't fidget, didn't tap her heel, didn't touch her hair. Then she heard her name. Michelle Chin, tall, composed, silver streaks woven into her dark bun, gestured her toward the boardroom. "Miss Kennedy, thank you for your time," Michelle said. "It's me who should thank you," Aurora replied, just as polished. "We will be joined by our CEO, Nerissa Kiraman," she said behind Aurora as they entered the boardroom. Aurora nodded as she took the seat across from Michelle. Inside the boardroom, Aurora prepared her presentation. Tablet open, files ready. Efficient. Quiet. Unbothered. Until the door opened. Nerissa Kiraman stepped in like the room belonged to her, pastel suit flowing, black waves cascading down her back, heels whispering against the tiles. She was elegance wrapped in power, sunlight wrapped in steel. Aurora looked up. For a single, traitorous second, her breath failed her. Nerissa's eyes were the blue of a perfect summer sky. Her lips curved into a soft, devastating smile. Every detail of her face looked sculpted with patient intention. Aurora Kennedy did not falter. Aurora Kennedy did not stare. Aurora Kennedy never swallowed hard. And yet, she did. Chapter 2. Unusual CEO. Aurora Kennedy did not get rattled. Not by clients, deadlines, or billion-dollar CEOs. But when Nerissa walked closer, the air shifted. Her perfume, rich, warm, intoxicating, brushed against Aurora like a hand at the back of her neck. A tiny twitch betrayed her, fingers tightening on her tablet for a split second. Nerissa took the seat beside her. Aurora's pulse climbed, unfamiliar and uninvited. She cleared her throat, steadying her voice like a blade. "My assistant sent the company portfolio to both your emails. I also have a copy ready if needed. I understand you're in need of a programmer for your next AI launch." Michelle nodded, but before she could speak, Nerissa did. "Tell me about your Tokyo launch, Miss Kennedy." Her voice was smooth, low, and unsettlingly intimate, as if it had been crafted specifically to slip beneath someone's ribs. Aurora straightened. "I don't see how that's relevant to this meeting, Miss Kiraman." Nerissa's lips tilted, softening into something undeniably mischievous. She leaned forward, closing the space between them. Her words brushed Aurora's ear like warm breath. "Your presentation is flawless," she murmured. "But I want to know about Tokyo." Aurora flicked her eyes toward Michelle, who suddenly found the contents of her tablet very absorbing. Then she turned back to Nerissa. "Tokyo is complicated," Aurora said, voice tight. "And not up for discussion. Client confidentiality." Nerissa did not back down. Nerissa did not accept no. She turned fully toward Aurora, crossing her legs with slow precision. When she spoke, her voice curled around Aurora's spine like silk. "Uncomplicate it for me." A bead of sweat formed at the base of Aurora's neck. She folded her hands neatly to hide the slight tremble. She inhaled softly, then forced the words out. AI can be groundbreaking in detecting rare blood disorders. Mine was apparently a bit too groundbreaking, so they're rewriting it to fit into whatever prehistoric setup they still insist on using. Nerissa laughed, a bright, unrestrained burst of joy that filled the boardroom. Aurora stared, stunned. Michelle offered a helpless smile, half apology, half confusion. Nerissa's laughter softened into a grin. Miss Kennedy, I want your program. And I will triple any offer you've received. Arcane wants to work with you, but only if the Tokyo program is on the table. Aurora opened her mouth, then closed it. Opened it again. Nothing came out. Had Nerissa Kiraman, the iron-willed CEO with the summer sky eyes, just cracked her armor? And would Aurora Kennedy ever be the same again? Chapter 3. The offer no one should make, but Nerissa does anyway. Aurora walked out of the boardroom like a woman escaping a battlefield with her dignity intact. Barely. Nerissa had thrown her off balance, and Aurora Kennedy did not get thrown. She prided herself on being unshakable, unflappable, and most importantly, uninterruptible. But Nerissa Kiraman had interrupted her entire nervous system. As Aurora waited for the elevator, she straightened her blazer, smoothed her hair, adjusted her tablet, none of which actually needed adjusting. It was just muscle memory trying to revive her sanity. The elevator dinged open and, of course, because the universe had a sense of humor, Nerissa Kiraman stepped out. Sunshine in a tailored pastel suit. Warm smile. Unsolicited radiance. Oh good, I caught you. Nerissa's tone was far too cheerful for someone who had just tried to buy Aurora and her soul in a boardroom. Aurora inhaled as if oxygen might steady her. Miss Kiraman. Nerissa leaned against the wall, arms crossed, no shame, no rush. You didn't give me your answer. I didn't give an answer because I didn't have one. You do. Nerissa smiled, infuriatingly confident. You just don't like it. Aurora's jaw tightened, the tiniest tick. Barely visible. Except Nerissa noticed. Of course she noticed. I don't respond well to pressure, Aurora said coolly. And I don't respond well to being told no, Nerissa replied sweetly. It was a stalemate, a battle fought entirely through eye contact and posture. Nerissa stepped closer, not aggressively, just close enough to brush Aurora's calm with a little heat. Walk with me. No. Nerissa nodded as though Aurora had just said yes. Perfect. And then, with absurd audacity, Nerissa began walking, fully expecting Aurora to follow. Aurora stared at her, lips parting. Michelle Chen, passing by, gave Aurora a sympathetic good luck surviving her look. Aurora closed her eyes for a beat. Then she walked. Not because Nerissa told her to, but because she absolutely refused to let that woman think she'd unsettled her. Even though, annoyingly, she had. Chapter 4. Terms and Conditions, Aurora's version. Nerissa led her to a private lounge overlooking the city, quiet, modern, serene. Aurora hated that it was beautiful. It felt like Nerissa had planned it, even though she clearly hadn't. Tea? Coffee? Nerissa asked, hands in her pockets like she owned the sunrise. No thank you. I'll get you coffee, Nerissa decided, completely ignoring the refusal. Aurora stared. I literally just said. Nerissa was already ordering it from the barista. Aurora took a slow breath, counting to 4. Her therapist would have been proud if she had one. Nerissa returned with 2 coffees and a smile so bright it should be illegal. I don't drink caffeine after 10, Aurora said. Nerissa placed the cup in front of her anyway. It's decaf. Aurora blinked. How would you? You're a programmer. The only reason someone in your field avoids caffeine is because it wrecks their focus. And you look like someone who'd consider wrecked focus a personal failure. Aurora swallowed a very undignified sound. Nerissa sat, crossing her legs. Now, let's talk Tokyo. No, Aurora's tone was crisp. Nerissa smiled. You know, most people at least pretend to consider my requests. I'm not most people. That, Nerissa said, is precisely why I want you. Aurora shifted, heat prickling the back of her neck. Professionally, she clarified. Nerissa's eyes sparkled. For now. Aurora cleared her throat so sharply it could cut glass. Miss Caraman, let's be clear, I don't give away my work because someone asks nicely. I didn't ask nicely, Nerissa corrected. I asked directly. And I don't respond to that approach. Nerissa leaned back, thoughtful. All right. Then tell me your terms. Aurora froze. My, what? You don't want to say yes. Fine. Then tell me what I need to do to change the answer. Aurora opened her mouth, but Nerissa lifted a gentle hand. And before you say nothing, remember who you're talking to. Aurora's chest tightened. Not with fear. With the sinking, terrifying realization that Nerissa genuinely could meet any terms she set. Which meant Aurora had to be very, very careful. Fine, Aurora said slowly. If we're discussing terms, then we're doing it my way. Nerissa's smile widened, sunshine wrapped in victory. That's all I wanted to hear. Aurora exhaled as if she'd just stepped into a trap. Because she had. And Nerissa Caraman was smiling like she built it just for her. Chapter 5. Terms, Boundaries, and Other Myths. Aurora Kennedy arrived at Arcane Tech with the energy of a woman preparing for war. Not chaotic war, no, that was for amateurs. This was a strategic, pre-calculated, color-coded in her calendar kind of war. She stepped into the glass conference room, placed her briefcase on the table, and neatly aligned her tablet, pen, and water bottle with the precision of a woman who alphabetizes her emotions just to avoid feeling them. She had one mission today. Set boundaries. Stick to them. Do not, under any circumstances, let Nerissa Caraman steamroll her again. Of course, the universe had jokes. The door swung open and in breezed Nerissa, dressed in a soft lemon cream suit that radiated optimism like it was a biological function. Her smile was bright enough to give Aurora a migraine. Miss Kennedy, she said with that warm, melodic tone that made people relax. Aurora, naturally, did the opposite. Miss Caraman, Aurora replied, professional enough to freeze wine. Nerissa took the seat right next to her. Of course she did. Personal space clearly meant nothing to people powered by sunshine. So, Nerissa said, crossing her legs and turning fully toward her, you wanted to discuss your terms? Yes. Aurora inhaled like she was bracing for impact. Given the scope of this project, there must be clearly defined expectations. Nerissa's smile widened, a dangerous omen. Aurora pulled up her digital document. I have 7 key work ethics I adhere to. They ensure productivity, clarity, and a functional working dynamic. Nerissa rested her chin on her hand, watching her like she was reciting poetry. I love clarity. Please. Go on. Aurora blinked. Focus. Proceed. First, boundaries. Work and personal matters remain separate. Always. Nerissa nodded. Reasonable. Aurora did not trust that nod for a second. Second, emotional neutrality. I remain objective throughout the project. Of course. Was that a sparkle in Nerissa's eyes? Why was there a sparkle? Aurora cleared her throat. Third, no personal attachment. Understood, Nerissa said, but the corner of her mouth lifted like she was trying not to laugh. Fourth. Yes. Keep going. Fourth, I do not respond favorably to repeated pressure. Nerissa's smile turned angelic. I would never pressure you. Aurora stared at her. Nerissa stared right back, glowing like a lighthouse of optimism and contradiction. Fifth, professional conduct remains the priority. Always, Nerissa agreed, sounding anything but professional. Aurora continued, her voice tightening. Sixth, I set the work pace. I don't rush. I don't scramble. Nerissa nodded slowly, eyes twinkling. Noted. Lastly, Aurora said, no one gets special treatment. Nerissa tilted her head, her hair slipping across her shoulder like a soft challenge. Not even me? Aurora mentally screamed. No, she said, far too quickly. Nerissa's lips curved. Interesting. Aurora's joy tightened. Do you have any questions regarding these terms? Nerissa leaned closer, close enough that Aurora caught that intoxicating perfume again, and said softly. Just one. Aurora's pulse betrayed her. Yes. Nerissa smiled like she already knew she'd win. How exactly do you expect to maintain all 7 of those when you look at me like that? Aurora's entire operating system crashed. I don't look at you like anything, she managed. Narice's smile softened. Miss Kennedy, you haven't even blinked since I walked in. Aurora blinked. Hard. Then twice more, aggressively, like she could force logic back into her bloodstream. This meeting is strictly professional, she said, regaining a shred of her ice. Of course it is, Nerissa murmured, leaning back. I fully support your terms. All 7. They'll be very fun to navigate. Aurora hated the way her stomach dropped. She hated that Nerissa sounded like she was promising trouble. And she absolutely hated, that a tiny, traitorous part of her was curious about the navigate part. Nerissa rose, gathering her folder. Our next meeting is tomorrow. Same time. Aurora nodded, composed once more. Yes. And please respect the boundaries discussed. Nerissa paused at the door, smiling like sunlight made human. No promises, Miss Kennedy. The door closed behind her, soft, final, devastating. Aurora sat back in her chair, exhaled through her teeth, and muttered, God help me. Because somehow, setting boundaries with Nerissa Kiraman felt less like building walls, and more like handing her the blueprint to knock them down. Chapter 6. The first day of collaboration. Aurora arrived at Arcane Tech promptly at 8:30. Early. Of course. She liked to arrive early. She liked control. She liked coffee that was exactly the right temperature and meetings that didn't surprise her. Nerissa Kiraman arrived at 8:37. Perfectly imperfect. Aurora sighed and looked at the door as it opened, expecting sunshine. And, of course, she got it. Good morning, Miss Kennedy, Nerissa said, her voice smooth, confident, warm. Ready to get started? Aurora straightened, keeping her tone icy. I've been ready. I expect efficiency today. No surprises. Nerissa grinned. Surprises are my specialty, but I'll try. Aurora tried not to roll her eyes. The first task was straightforward. Integrate Aurora's Tokyo AI protocol into Arcane Tech's current systems without triggering any existing errors. Aurora explained the steps concisely, and Nerissa listened. Listened. Then she asked questions. Questions that didn't just probe the system, but the logic behind Aurora's methods. Aurora froze once or twice, and only once did Nerissa notice. That was all it took. A slight smile, like she'd caught Aurora off guard on purpose. Interesting, Nerissa said softly. You really do have everything mapped. Impressive, but tell me why you chose this method. Aurora blinked. Because it's precise. Efficient. Proven. Nerissa leaned closer, her tone soft, her curiosity genuine. Proven is fine, but sometimes you have to take a calculated risk to reach the extraordinary. Don't you think? Aurora felt a twitch in her spine, the part that didn't like deviation, flaring up. I prefer control over risk. Nerissa tilted her head. And yet you're here, working with me. Aurora's hands twitched over her tablet. That was professional necessity. Of course, Nerissa said, smiling. But a little fun along the way won't hurt, right? Aurora looked up, and for a moment, she met Nerissa's gaze. Bright, unwavering, almost playful. She tried to look disinterested. Failed. For the rest of the morning, Aurora guided Nerissa through the program's parameters. Nerissa asked questions. Aurora answered. Nerissa tried suggestions. Aurora evaluated. The balance of control was delicate. I've already compiled the dependency tree and updated the modules for integration, Aurora replied, voice clipped, scanning her tablet. Efficiency is priority. No unnecessary testing cycles. Nerissa smiled, unruffled. Good. I like clarity. But tell me why you're flattening the inheritance here instead of running a multi-threaded approach. Aurora's brow lifted. A test. Classic. She was prepared. Flattening the inheritance reduces runtime complexity. Multi-threading introduces race conditions on legacy subsystems. We're not compromising determinism. Nerissa said, leaning closer over the table. Legacy doesn't scare me, but determinism can be predictable. Have you considered event-driven asynchronous calls for the Tokyo AI pipeline? Aurora's fingers twitched over her tablet. Yes, but the overhead for garbage collection and context switching on our current arcane framework would triple latency. It's non-viable. Nerissa hummed thoughtfully, then tapped her tablet, pulling up system metrics faster than Aurora could blink. I see your simulation output. But if we refactor these modules into microservices with load balancing at the edge, we maintain determinism and reduce bottlenecks. Thoughts? Aurora paused. That impressed her. The woman could read code like a blueprint. She recalculated. It's viable. But refactoring the modules will take a full sprint and a half. And any deviation in the schema mapping could break the detection algorithm. Nerissa nodded as if she had already anticipated the objection. I already spoke to the DevOps team. Schema migration is automated with rollback scripts. We can run it in parallel with the testing sandbox. Aurora exhaled softly and cursed herself for being momentarily impressed. You know your stack. Of course, Nerissa said, smiling. I built the stack. Multi-million-dollar infrastructure doesn't run on assumptions. For the next hour, Aurora laid out the AI's pipeline input vectors, neural network optimization, anomaly detection routines, and Nerissa interjected on every branch, every conditional, every potential edge case. Watch memory allocation here, Aurora said, pointing at the tensor operations on her tablet. Optimized, Nerissa said, swiping a finger across the screen. I see you're using sparse matrices. Could compress further using CSR format for the rare disorder datasets. Cuts RAM usage by 40%. Aurora blinked. That's correct. Correct? Nerissa's smile curved. I aim for better. Aurora frowned, trying to remain unaffected. Nerissa wasn't just competent, she was preemptive. Every line of code Aurora suggested, every safeguard, Nerissa had already analyzed, tested in her mental sandbox, and improved upon. Aurora was aware that each time she conceded even a tiny point, Nerissa's smile widened. Aurora told herself it didn't matter. And yet, by lunch, Aurora realized something. She still didn't know how to read Nerissa Kira Man. Was she testing her? Or was Nerissa just like this all the time? Aurora couldn't decide. And that uncertainty, that small, insistent curiosity, it was beginning to unsettle her. And yet Aurora still clung to control. Still insisted boundaries. Still refused to let the CEO steamroll her. I'll approve the refactor, Aurora said finally, keeping her tone as neutral as possible. Under the condition that all sandbox tests pass with zero error tolerance and rollback is verified in staging. Nerissa leaned back, satisfied. Accepted. But let's keep it efficient. The Tokyo launch won't wait for hesitation. Aurora's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Zero hesitation, zero error, zero compromise. Yet the tiny, traitorous part of her, the part that Nerissa had already noticed, wanted to see what efficient really meant under her guidance. Chapter 7: Testing Limits. Aurora Kennedy had prided herself on control, on precision, on the comforting rigidity of schedules, deadlines, and perfectly clean code. Nerissa Kira Man, however, had other ideas. The morning began with the AI modules fully loaded into arcane text servers. Aurora checked dependencies, confirmed memory allocations, and ran diagnostic routines. All as expected. Efficient. Predictable. Controlled. Good, Nerissa said, leaning over her shoulder, reviewing Aurora's logs. Everything looks too neat. Aurora blinked. Too neat. Nerissa's lips curved. Predictable. Comfortable. Isn't innovation a little messy? Aurora resisted the urge to roll her eyes. Innovation without control is just chaos. And chaos is expensive. Depends how you define expensive, Nerissa countered, tapping a line of code. This function could optimize anomaly detection by 20% if we relax the threshold slightly. Aurora froze, fingers hovering. I cannot compromise sensitivity. False negatives are unacceptable. Nerissa's gaze softened, but her tone sharpened like a scalpel. I don't ask lightly, Miss Kennedy. But trust me, this tweak is safe. I wouldn't suggest otherwise. Aurora exhaled sharply. You mean you've already tested it yourself? Of course. Multiple iterations. And there it was again, Nerissa, meeting her step for step, mind blazing at the same speed, judging every branch, anticipating every reaction. Aurora adjusted her glasses. Then I'll need documentation and rollback protocols. Full audit logs. And I want a comparison between baseline and optimized outputs before deployment. Nerissa smiled, almost indulgently. Done. But I also want you to see the real potential here. Not just the safe, predictable path. Aurora bit her lip. That tiny, traitorous part of her flared. And what does that path involve? Nerissa leaned closer over her tablet, eyes gleaming with mischief and confidence. Testing boundaries. Seeing what the AI can really do. And, maybe, seeing what you can really do. Aurora froze. Excuse me. Nerissa's hand hovered near the tablet, her finger tracing a line of code Aurora had spent hours perfecting. I mean, you've structured this for safety. That's brilliant. But brilliance doesn't always mean maximum impact. Sometimes you have to bend the rules, professionally, ethically, yes, but bend them to achieve the extraordinary. Aurora's heart skipped, and she hated that it did. Her fingers twitched over her keyboard, but she held her ground. I do not bend rules for anyone. Not even you, Miss Kira Man. Nerissa chuckled softly, the sound like sunlight through glass. Oh, I know. That's why this is going to be interesting. The next hours were a delicate dance. Aurora running scripts, monitoring outputs, enforcing protocols. Nerissa suggesting tweaks, questioning logic, testing her patience, and occasionally catching Aurora looking up, caught between frustration and fascination. Aurora tried to ignore it. She reminded herself of the rules, boundaries, neutrality, no personal attachment. And yet, every time Nerissa smiled, every time she leaned in just a fraction too close, every time she solved a problem Aurora thought untouchable, the rules felt thinner. Fragile. By the end of the day, the Tokyo AI modules were performing better than Aurora ever imagined. Optimized, stable, and yet, somehow riskier. Aurora closed her laptop, straightening her blazer. We'll continue tomorrow. Same parameters. No deviation unless fully documented. Nerissa stood, brushing her hands over her suit. Of course. But tomorrow. I think I might test a few more boundaries. Aurora clenched her jaw. Don't. Nerissa's smile lingered, unstoppable, sunshine wrapped in challenge. I do. And as Aurora left the office, the words replayed in her head. Test boundaries. Not the AI. Not the project. Her. Chapter 8, Layers of Code. Aurora Kennedy entered Arcane Tech's lab, perfectly prepared, tablet synced, predictive models queued, and backup scripts loaded for every contingency. Her program, built to detect rare blood disorders, was ready for sandbox testing. Nerissa Kiraman was already at the main console, reviewing lines of code with her usual composure. Yet something in her posture was different. Subtle. A quick intake of breath here, a pause there. Aurora noted it, filing it away as, maybe stress. Morning, Aurora said, voice crisp. All test vectors are preloaded. The predictive model is ready to run. Nerissa nodded. Good. Let's start. Aurora ran the simulation. Lines of code scrolled, anomaly detection algorithms mapping unusual patterns in rare hematological disorders. Everything ran smoothly, outputs precise, optimized. And yet, Nerissa's attention lingered unusually long on the results, eyes narrowing slightly, jaw tense just enough to betray something beneath the surface. Aurora's curiosity tugged. Your focus is intense. You don't just watch as a CEO, this feels personal. Is this an ethical concern? A clinical oversight you're worried about? Nerissa hesitated, just a fraction, an almost imperceptible falter in her usually radiant confidence. She cleared her throat and straightened, masking it instantly with a warm, disarming smile. Some things are harder to detach from than others. Let's just say I have a vested interest in the outcome. Aurora raised an eyebrow. Vested interest? In what way? Nerissa's lips quirked, but she looked away briefly, as if weighing her words. Professional mostly. But let's focus on your AI. Aurora tilted her head, sensing there was something Nerissa wasn't saying. Something personal. Yet, she kept her tone neutral. Very well. The model's thresholds are adjustable, but I've optimized them for maximum sensitivity without triggering false positives. Any deviation could compromise detection rates. Nerissa leaned closer over the console, eyes scanning the outputs. I see. You've accounted for edge cases, rare outliers, and yet the system adapts without human input. Impressive. Aurora's fingers twitched over the tablet. She wanted to ask more, about the falter, the intensity, but Nerissa had already shifted focus, redirecting the conversation back to code, predictions, and data structures. Still, a seed of curiosity had planted itself in Aurora's mind. Something beyond the lines of code. Something personal, something urgent, but she didn't yet know what. And Nerissa? She smiled softly to herself, hiding the weight behind her eyes, knowing the program meant far more than Aurora could guess. Chapter 9, Running the Program. The lab was silent except for the low hum of servers and the faint tapping of Aurora's stylus on her tablet. Every predictive model, every anomaly detection routine, every conditional threshold had been triple-checked. Nerissa hovered nearby, her presence steady, radiant, impossible to ignore. She didn't need to speak to make her attention known. Aurora felt it anyway, like a subtle vibration under the skin. Let's run the next batch, Aurora said, eyes fixed on the data streams. I've isolated the high-risk datasets and adjusted the parameters for rare disorder detection. Nerissa leaned closer over the console, watching lines of code flash across the screen. I see you've accounted for variance across hematological markers. Impressive, she murmured, voice low, almost intimate. Aurora kept her focus. It's necessary. False negatives could be catastrophic. I do not compromise on accuracy. Nerissa nodded, eyes lingering on Aurora's fingers as they swiped across the tablet, making micro-adjustments. Of course, accuracy is critical, but sometimes impact matters just as much. You've considered edge cases thoroughly, but the real world isn't always neat. You know that, right? Aurora paused, noting the subtle tension in Nerissa's expression. She didn't ask what she meant. Didn't want to risk breaking protocol. Instead, she replied, I trust the system will handle irregularities. That's what it was designed for. Nerissa gave a soft, fleeting smile, almost sad. I trust the system too. But some outcomes matter more than others. Aurora felt a twitch in her chest, but forced her hands back to the tablet. All outcomes matter. That's the point of predictive modeling. Nerissa didn't push further, but her gaze stayed fixed on Aurora, intense and unwavering. Something about the way she lingered over the results, the way her fingers hovered just above the console, Aurora couldn't place it, but it felt different. The batch finished. Aurora scanned the results, eyes sharp and clinical. The AI had flagged a set of anomalies she hadn't expected. Carefully, she double-checked the inputs, the neural network parameters, the predictive weighting. They're valid, Aurora said finally. These markers indicate significant deviation. The system performed as designed. Nerissa's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. Yes, it did. And that's good. Very good. Aurora looked up. There was a hint of something behind Nerissa's smile, something personal, something urgent, but Nerissa didn't elaborate. She simply moved to the side, giving Aurora space, as though letting her process the weight of the work herself. Aurora clenched her jaw, resisting the urge to ask. The air between them was charged, professional yet tinged with unspoken tension. She had no idea why Nerissa cared so much, but she did care. That much was clear. And Aurora couldn't ignore it. Chapter 10, The Breakthrough Question. Aurora Kennedy sat at the console, fingers moving deftly over the tablet as the AI continued to analyze patient datasets. Predictive output scrolled in real time, anomaly detection markers highlighting rare patterns with crisp efficiency. Nerissa stood beside her, leaning over slightly, eyes fixed on the screen. She didn't touch the tablet, didn't interfere with the code, she just watched, absorbing every detail, every nuance of Aurora's precision. How accurate is it? Nerissa asked softly. Her voice wasn't casual, it carried a subtle weight, as if the answer mattered more than anything else in the room. Aurora kept her eyes on the output. Accuracy is high. Detection thresholds are optimized for rare disorder markers, adjusted for patient variance. False positives are minimal. False negatives, theoretically zero, given ideal input data. Nerissa nodded slowly as though weighing every word. And if it detects something, what then? Are there treatment protocols it can suggest? Or is it just detection? Aurora glanced up, eyes sharp. Detection is step 1. The program can flag anomalies, predict progression probabilities, and suggest potential intervention pathways. But treatment requires human oversight. Ethical guidelines prohibit autonomous prescription. The AI can guide, recommend, highlight, but it cannot replace clinical judgment. Nerissa's gaze softened, almost imperceptibly. She didn't move, didn't speak for a moment, but Aurora noticed a micro-expression, her jaw tightening, eyes narrowing just enough to betray a quiet urgency. I see, Nerissa said finally, voice low measured. So, the program can literally give people a chance before it's too late. Before the markers worsen, before it becomes irreversible. Aurora nodded, adjusting a parameter. Exactly. It's predictive, adaptive, and continuously learning. The more data we feed it, the better it becomes at recognizing anomalies that are otherwise undetectable. Nerissa leaned a fraction closer, gaze never leaving the screen. And how soon could it be deployed for real patients? In hospitals. Aurora hesitated slightly. Once we complete full integration testing, validate outputs against live datasets, and ensure regulatory compliance, realistically, within a year. Nerissa's lips parted just slightly, a quiet exhale she didn't intend Aurora to notice. A year, that's still a lifetime for some people. Aurora's fingers paused. She registered the undertone, the intensity behind the otherwise casual phrasing, but she didn't push. We're moving as fast as ethically possible. Precision is critical. Nerissa nodded, eyes softening, but her hands remained clasped behind her back. I understand. I just hope the world realizes how important this is. Aurora returned to her tablet, resuming the integration routines, but something had shifted. The intensity in Nerissa's attention wasn't just about business. It wasn't just about the AI's success. It was something personal. Aurora didn't yet know the truth. She didn't know what stakes Nerissa carried silently behind that composed exterior. But for the first time, Aurora felt the weight of it. The program wasn't just lines of code and predictive models, it was potentially a lifeline. And Nerissa was more invested than any CEO Aurora had ever met. Chapter 11, A Sample to Test. Aurora Kennedy was already in the lab, eyes scanning lines of code and anomaly detection thresholds. The AI had processed thousands of datasets, but Nerissa had a different idea today. I have a test sample, Nerissa said softly, holding a small, sealed vial. Just to see how the program handles a new input. Standard protocol. Nothing unusual. Aurora raised an eyebrow, cautious but intrigued. A new sample? For validation purposes. Exactly, Nerissa said, her smile calm, reassuring, professional. I want to ensure the AI flags anomalies correctly when faced with data it hasn't encountered before. Aurora's fingers itched over her tablet. I can run a batch for external validation, but are you sure it's pre-processed correctly? Contamination, data errors. Nerissa waved her off lightly. All pre-validated. Nothing to worry about. Just follow your usual protocols. Aurora nodded, methodical as ever. She placed the sample under the scanner, feeding it into the AI's pipeline. Neural network outputs began to populate the screen, anomaly scores, predictive markers, confidence intervals. Interesting, Aurora murmured. The markers are subtle but significant. The deviation falls within rare hematological anomalies. This is exactly the kind of edge case the model was trained for. Nerissa leaned closer, eyes trained on the results, but her expression was unreadable. And how does it handle it? Are the predictive outputs reliable? Aurora adjusted a parameter, recalculating weighted probabilities. Yes. Confidence at 97%. The predictive pathways suggest potential early-stage intervention. If we had patient histories integrated, we could model treatment options immediately. Nerissa nodded, lips pressing together in thought. Good. That's exactly what I wanted to see. Aurora glanced up at her. Who provided the sample? Just for documentation. Nerissa's smile remained perfect. A standard donor sample. Confidentiality applies. That's all. Aurora returned to the tablet, but something lingered in her mind, a faint sense that the data felt personal, almost intimate in the way it aligned with her system. She shook it off. It's just a test, she whispered to herself, tapping a few more commands. Nerissa's gaze lingered on Aurora, her eyes softening for the briefest moment. She said nothing about the truth, the fact that the sample was her own, her personal stake hidden in plain sight. Aurora didn't know. And yet, every calculated step, every output on the screen, drew them closer in ways neither of them could fully articulate. For Aurora, it was another test. A chance to prove the program's accuracy. For Nerissa, it was a quiet gamble. A single vial that could change everything if Aurora succeeded, if the AI worked as it should, if Aurora never realized whose blood it really was. And so the lab hummed, algorithms running, predictive markers flashing, a silent tension threading between them. The professional boundary was intact. For now. Chapter 12: Unusual Precision. Aurora Kennedy sat back in her chair, scanning the outputs from the latest test sample. Every anomaly, every predictive marker, every probability percentage was within expected ranges, but one detail gnawed at her. The system had flagged certain markers with near-perfect precision, too perfect, statistically improbable. Aurora's brows knitted. That doesn't make sense, she muttered, adjusting the algorithm's weighting parameters, double-checking error margins. It's almost tailored. Nerissa, standing just behind her, watched quietly. Her hands folded neatly, her expression calm, but her eyes were sharp, tracking every flicker of Aurora's curiosity. Tailored, she asked softly. What do you mean? Aurora didn't look up. The predictive model is functioning correctly, yes. But this data, it aligns with patterns I've rarely, if ever, seen. The anomaly markers hit every edge case I accounted for. Too clean. Too accurate. Nerissa tilted her head, faint smile playing on her lips. Interesting. Perhaps the system is responding well to the input. That's encouraging, isn't it? Aurora finally looked up, meeting Nerissa's gaze. Encouraging, yes, but unusual. Statistically, this shouldn't be so seamless. The confidence intervals are near perfect. The predictive outputs suggest a level of accuracy I didn't expect. Nerissa's smile softened, almost imperceptibly, just enough to hint at pride and something more, something Aurora didn't yet see. Perhaps it's lucky, she said lightly, though the warmth in her voice suggested otherwise. Aurora shook her head, returning to the tablet. Luck doesn't factor into neural networks. Data drives outcomes. This is too precise to be random. Nerissa stepped a fraction closer, her presence calm but compelling. Maybe it's just the right data in the right hands. And the right system. Aurora froze ever so slightly at the words, a subtle ripple through her disciplined focus. The right system, she asked, voice careful. Nerissa's lips quirked, unreadable. Yes. Sometimes the system, your system, is more compatible with certain inputs than others. That's all I'm saying. Aurora's fingers hovered over the tablet, recalculating, verifying, triple-checking. She wanted to push further, probe deeper, but a quiet instinct told her that Nerissa wasn't revealing everything. And yet, the intensity in Nerissa's gaze, the subtle pride in her voice, hinted at something profoundly personal. Aurora returned to her data, but the thought lingered. Why did this sample behave so differently? Why was it flawless in a way she hadn't expected? Nerissa, for her part, said nothing. She only watched, heart quietly racing, knowing the AI was responding perfectly to the one thing that mattered most, her own hidden stake, and that Aurora, brilliant as she was, had no idea. For now. Chapter 13: Questions Without Answers. Aurora Kennedy sat in front of the lab console, her stylus poised, eyes scanning line after line of output from the latest batch. The AI's anomaly detection had flagged patterns with near-perfect precision, just as it had with the previous test sample. She frowned, tapping a few keys, running diagnostics. "This isn't random," she muttered. "The predictive outputs are almost impossibly consistent." Nerissa, standing a few feet behind, watched quietly, her hands clasped. "Almost impossibly consistent," she repeated softly, voice calm, controlled, but threaded with a quiet intensity. Aurora's fingers paused. "The system shouldn't respond this way. The edge cases I accounted for, these results align perfectly. Too perfectly." Nerissa stepped a fraction closer, careful not to crowd her space. "Perhaps your algorithm is more capable than you give it credit for." Aurora's eyes flicked up at her. "It's capable, yes. But even a neural network has limits. Inputs vary, noise exists, data is imperfect. Something about this sample is different." Nerissa's lips curved into a faint, enigmatic smile. "Different?" "Yes," Aurora said, her tone clipped but curiosity creeping in. "There's a level of precision here I can't explain. It's optimized beyond the training parameters. I need to understand why." Nerissa remained quiet, letting Aurora stew in the mystery, letting her brilliance push her to probe further without giving anything away. "Some things aren't immediately obvious," she said finally, almost like a gentle tease. "The system is responding perfectly, perhaps because it was meant to." Aurora's brows furrowed. "Meant to?" Nerissa tilted her head, letting a pause hang in the air, just long enough for Aurora to wonder if she was hinting at something personal or just being poetic. "Sometimes, the data chooses the system, just as the system chooses the input. All we see is the result." Aurora returned to her tablet, recalculating probabilities, double-checking weights and thresholds. But the thought gnawed at her. Why this input? Why this consistency? Why does the AI respond as if it recognizes something? Nerissa stepped back slightly satisfied. She didn't reveal the truth, that the sample was herself, that the anomaly wasn't just statistical, but personal. Aurora remained unaware, trapped in the perfect logic of her work, yet subtly aware that something intangible was at play. The lab hummed quietly around them, servers running, screens flashing, predictive models calculating. Two brilliant minds, professional yet deeply entwined by a hidden thread, inching closer to truths neither was fully ready to confront. For Aurora, it was just a puzzling anomaly, a challenge for her logic. For Nerissa, it was far more, a personal gamble, a test, and a whisper of hope, hidden in plain sight. Chapter 14, Pushing Boundaries. Aurora Kennedy's eyes were locked on the console, fingers flying over her tablet as she ran yet another round of simulations. The AI had processed every dataset she had, and yet the test sample, the one Nerissa had provided, kept producing outputs that were unsettlingly precise. She paused, leaning back slightly, lips pressed together. "This isn't standard deviation. This isn't statistical noise. Something about this input is interacting with the system differently than anything else we've tested." Nerissa, standing quietly beside her, kept her expression neutral, though her eyes betrayed the faintest flicker of tension. "Different, yes. Perhaps it's just an edge case." "Nothing more," she said, calm, measured. Aurora glanced up, sharp. "Edge case? This is beyond edge. It's optimized, as if the data is anticipating the algorithm, adapting in ways it shouldn't be able to. I need to understand why." Nerissa's lips curved just slightly, faint, enigmatic. "Curiosity is good. But remember, some things are confidential. Some patterns exist only to be observed, not explained." Aurora froze ever so slightly, reading the nuance. Her mind raced, fingers twitching over the tablet. "Confidential? Are you hiding something in the sample?" Nerissa shook her head subtly, letting a faint smile slip. "I'm just asking you to observe it. Focus on what the AI can do, not the origin of the input." Aurora hesitated, her analytical mind fighting against the unspoken. But the AI's behavior, this level of accuracy, someone must have contributed something unique. Otherwise, these outputs are impossible. Narisa's gaze softened, eyes locking on Aurora for just a heartbeat longer than necessary. Unique, yes. But you've done your work, and that's what matters. Let the AI do its job. Aurora swallowed, tension rising, curiosity and professionalism warring inside her. She knew Nerissa wasn't lying, not exactly, but something wasn't adding up. Something personal. Yet she didn't press further, not now. Not when the AI demanded her focus. She returned to the tablet, inputting new variables, recalculating probability thresholds, fine-tuning the model. But a new awareness lingered. Nerissa wasn't just invested in the program professionally. There was a weight behind her presence, subtle, urgent, invisible. Nerissa stepped back slightly, watching silently, satisfied with Aurora's meticulousness and yet carrying the unspoken truth. She could see the brilliant precision in Aurora's work, the AI responding perfectly, and for now, her secret was safe. The lab remained quiet, humming with the quiet rhythm of servers and screens. Two minds, driven by logic and innovation, circling closer to each other without realizing how entwined they had already become, one professional, one intensely personal, one hidden in plain sight. Chapter 15: The Slip. Aurora Kennedy's fingers flew over the tablet, eyes scanning the outputs from the test sample for the 5th time that morning. The AI's predictions were flawless, almost unnervingly precise, and the anomaly markers were too consistent to ignore. Nerissa stood nearby, arms folded, leaning lightly against the console. She said nothing, but her presence was magnetic, steady, warm, and intense all at once. Aurora could feel it, could sense the faint tension behind the professional calm. "This doesn't make sense," Aurora muttered, recalculating the probability thresholds for the 3rd time. Every marker aligns perfectly with the predictive model. Statistically, impossible. Nerissa's lips twitched, almost imperceptibly. "The model is performing well," she said softly, her voice betraying a slight falter. Aurora's eyes snapped up. She caught it, a microflicker, a hesitation in Nerissa's tone. Her analytical mind sharpened immediately. "Wait," she said, leaning back. "Did you just hesitate?" Nerissa's gaze met hers, calm and controlled. "Perhaps. Observation requires patience, yes." Aurora's brow furrowed. She studied Nerissa, noting the subtle tension in her posture, the slight tremor in her composure, a stark contrast to the otherwise perfect CEO mask she always wore. Aurora's voice dropped, measured but probing. "Nerissa, is this sample yours?" The room seemed to shrink. Nerissa's eyes widened just fractionally, and for a heartbeat, Aurora saw the faintest flash of vulnerability in the woman who usually radiated confidence and control. "No," Nerissa said, almost too quickly. Then she coughed lightly, clearing her throat, voice smooth again. "I mean, it's just a test sample, as I said. For the AI validation." Aurora didn't move, didn't blink. "Nerissa, the precision, the consistency, it's uncanny. This sample responds to the model in ways no other input does. I need to know. Is it yours?" Nerissa's composure wavered, a subtle sigh slipping past her lips. She stepped back slightly, running a hand over her face, collecting herself. "Yes," she admitted finally, voice low, almost a whisper, yet steady. "It's mine. But only as a test. Nothing more." Aurora's fingers hovered above the tablet. For a moment, the analytical side of her mind fought with the human instinct to pause, to process the revelation. "So, you've been personally invested all this time?" Nerissa nodded, eyes not leaving the screen. "I had to know if it could work. If it could, detect what needed detecting. I couldn't risk waiting for external samples. This was the only way to validate the AI fully." Aurora's heart skipped, but she kept her composure. Her mind raced. This was bigger than she'd imagined. The precision, the stakes, the personal connection, it all made sense now, yet it complicated everything. She finally exhaled softly, fingers returning to the tablet, recalibrating with newfound understanding. "It's working," she murmured. "The AI is exceptional, even with personal variables. And now I understand why you've been so invested." Nerissa allowed herself the barest hint of relief, lips curving in a fleeting, quiet smile. Thank you, Aurora, for taking this seriously, for respecting the work, and for not judging. Aurora met her gaze, professional yet softer than usual. It's just data, she said, but the weight behind her words was clear. I care about the results. That's all. Everything else, we'll handle as we go. The lab hummed quietly around them. Two brilliant minds, now fully aware of the personal stakes, yet still tethered by logic, precision, and a fragile trust, ready to continue the work that had quietly bound them together. Chapter 16 Lines in the Code. Aurora Kennedy's fingers hovered over the tablet, the test sample's data still streaming across the screen. The AI's predictive outputs were flawless, alarming in their precision, but Aurora's mind was no longer entirely on the code. She looked up at Nerissa, calm, yet eyes burning with focus. Nerissa, I need to remind you of the 7 conditions we agreed upon before we even started this collaboration. Nerissa raised an eyebrow, her usual composed smile flickering ever so slightly. 7 conditions, she asked, voice smooth, but tension prickling just beneath. Aurora's tone was steady, meticulous. Number 1, full transparency about all data sources. Number 2, no personal involvement in the testing that could bias outcomes. Number 3, ethical oversight at every step. Number 4, no falsifying outputs to achieve a desired result. Number 5, informed consent from every human subject. Number 6, clear separation between professional work and personal interest. Number 7, absolute honesty about the stakes involved. Nerissa's jaw tightened imperceptibly, a subtle flicker of frustration, or perhaps guilt, passing through her gaze. Aurora continued, voice unwavering. These conditions are non-negotiable. They exist because the work we do here, this AI, isn't just code. It's potentially life-saving. Compromising ethics, bending truths, that's not collaboration. That's corruption. Nerissa opened her mouth to speak, then closed it, swallowed, and nodded slowly. Aurora, she began, voice low, almost pleading. Aurora's eyes didn't waver. No, Nerissa. I care about the program. I care about the AI. I care about the people it can help. But I do not work unethically. I do not work with lies. And I will not be complicit in personal interests disguised as professional necessity. With a few precise taps, Aurora brought the program to a halt. The streams of predictive outputs froze, the lab humming settling into an uneasy quiet. Nerissa's breath caught for a fraction of a second, her perfectly controlled demeanor faltering. You're shutting it down? Aurora nodded, calm, resolute. Yes. Until full transparency is restored, until the conditions are respected, until I can trust that every output is unbiased and ethical, this AI does not run. Nerissa's hands twitched slightly, a subtle display of frustration and vulnerability, but she said nothing. Aurora continued, softer now, but unwavering. This isn't about personal stakes. It's about integrity. It's about responsibility. If we compromise that now, we compromise everything this AI could ever achieve. And I won't allow that. For a long moment, silence hung between them. Nerissa's composure returned, her smile fragile but intact. You're relentless, she murmured. Aurora allowed herself a small, controlled exhale. I'm precise. I'm disciplined. I follow the rules I set for myself and for this work. That's non-negotiable. Nerissa nodded slowly, the glint of respect mixed with frustration in her eyes. She realized she had been caught in the collision of personal desire and professional ethics, and for the first time, she could do nothing but wait, watch, and perhaps learn from Aurora's unwavering code of conduct. Chapter 17, Departure and Reckoning. Aurora Kennedy gathered her things with quiet precision, tablet and briefcase placed carefully in her arms. She stood, smoothing the front of her blazer, her posture immaculate, her mind still sharp with logic and resolve. Nerissa watched her from across the lab, the weight of the halted AI pressing on her chest, heavier than she expected. Aurora's calm, unwavering gaze met hers for a moment, and in that look was the finality of her decision. "I trust you understand why this is necessary," Aurora said, voice cool but not unkind. "Until the conditions are fully respected, the program does not run. And I cannot compromise ethics for anything." Nerissa opened her mouth to respond, to protest, but no words came. She realized, with a sudden pang of clarity, just how much she had gambled. Not the AI, not even her company, but herself. The sample, the secrecy, her own condition. Nerissa had put her life at risk in pursuit of validation, in the hope that the AI could give her the answers she so desperately needed. And now Aurora had walked away, leaving her alone with the consequences. Aurora's heels clicked against the lab floor, each step deliberate, distancing herself from the chaos Nerissa had quietly orchestrated. She reached the door, paused, and without turning back said, "Integrity isn't flexible, Nerissa. Neither is trust." And then she was gone. Nerissa sank into a nearby chair, hands pressed to her face. The lab hummed around her, the AI dormant, the screens dark. For the first time, she felt the full weight of what she'd done, not just bending rules, not just hiding behind personal stakes, but compromising her own safety, her own life. All for a secret she could no longer conceal from the one person who mattered in this project. Her chest tightened, breaths coming in shallow, measured pulls. She realized the truth in a way she couldn't ignore. Aurora's brilliance, her ethics, her precision, they were untouchable. Nerissa could manipulate no system, no data, no algorithm to bend that. And now she had to face the fallout, not just for the AI, but for herself. The silence pressed on her, heavier than any dataset, more unforgiving than any predictive model. She had put her life on the line. And for the first time, she understood that the real risk had nothing to do with code or algorithms. It was the one person she had let in, and the one person she couldn't risk losing. Nerissa exhaled slowly, letting the gravity settle. There was no undoing what had happened, no rerunning the scenario in a simulator. Only one thing was certain. If she wanted the AI, if she wanted redemption, she had to find a way back to Aurora, and fast. Chapter 18: Sleepless Data. Aurora Kennedy sat in her apartment late into the night, tablet open, lines of code scrolling endlessly across the screen. The AI's outputs from Nerissa's sample replayed in her mind, every anomaly, every precise prediction, every potential breakthrough. Her eyes were sharp, analytical, yet her focus fractured. The numbers didn't lie. This AI could save Nerissa. It could detect markers, guide treatments, predict outcomes with near-perfect accuracy. But the weight of Aurora's own ethics pressed against her chest, heavier than any algorithm could measure. She ran her fingers through her hair, leaning back in her chair. She had the knowledge, the ability, the insight, but she couldn't justify going back under the circumstances. Nerissa had crossed the lines Aurora had so clearly drawn. She had hidden her personal stakes, compromised her integrity. And yet, every thought in Aurora's mind circled back to the stakes, the urgency, the life at risk. Her phone lay silent on the desk. She could see the missed calls from Nerissa, pleas, questions, attempts at contact, but she didn't reach for it. Pride. Integrity. Rules. Aurora exhaled, closing her eyes briefly, and saw Nerissa's face. Her sunny optimism, the strength behind her gaze, the way she refused to back down. Nerissa was brilliant, but vulnerable, and now she was counting on Aurora in ways she didn't even know. Sleep eluded her. Her thoughts oscillated between professional duty and personal pull. Every calculation, every predictive model, every potential output screamed for action, but her principles held her back. Aurora's hands hovered over her tablet again, almost subconsciously, and she typed a few lines of code, stopped, erased them. Her mind replayed the test sample, every anomaly flagged, every marker precise. She could help. She should help. But to do so now would be to compromise herself. The night stretched long and silent. Aurora couldn't eat, couldn't focus, couldn't sleep. The AI hummed quietly, servers running in the background, predictive models calculating potential outcomes she couldn't yet act on. She sat there alone, eyes wide, pulse quickened by worry and responsibility. Her intellect told her to wait, to uphold her ethics, to maintain the discipline that had carried her through every professional challenge. Her heart, however, whispered another truth. Nerissa needed her. And every passing second counted. Aurora closed her eyes again, trying to calm the storm in her mind, knowing that every sleepless night, every frustrated breath, was a testament to the impossible choice she had made between saving a life and saving herself from compromise. And yet, deep down, she knew, the moment she would finally act, the moment she reached past her pride, the data would demand her attention, and she would have no choice but to respond. Chapter 19: The Call to Action. Aurora Kennedy's evening had been predictably disciplined. A few hours of code, precise calculations, and quiet reflection. Until her phone buzzed, a message from Michelle Chin. Aurora frowned, adjusting her glasses, seeing the sender's name. Miss Kennedy, the message began, formal yet urgent. Nerissa has been admitted to St. George's Medical Center. It's critical. She doesn't know I am reaching out to you. Aurora froze, her fingers tightening around the tablet. She inhaled sharply, heart thundering, not in panic, but in that familiar, cold precision that set her mind racing. She read the message twice, then again. Michelle's follow-up call came moments later. Aurora, Michelle said, her tone steady but carrying the faintest undercurrent of urgency. I know you've upheld your principles, but Nerissa, she's counting on you. The AI program, only your expertise can stabilize her. She needs you. Aurora closed her eyes briefly, exhaling slowly. Her mind immediately began running through protocols, neural network parameters, predictive markers, all the simulations she had run on Nerissa's sample. She knew what the AI could do, and now she was being forced to consider action outside the bounds of her carefully constructed ethics. I understand the situation, Michelle, Aurora said, voice controlled, measured. But the conditions I set, they're non-negotiable. I cannot compromise integrity, even under duress. Michelle's voice softened, almost pleading. Aurora, it's not about compromise. It's about application. You can help her without bending your principles. The AI is already trained on her markers. You just need to authorize it. She trusts you, and frankly, so do I. Aurora's fingers hovered over the tablet. She could feel the weight of every second passing. The calculations screamed for intervention. The predictive outputs, the anomaly markers, the potential treatments, they all demanded action. Her mind raced, her heart clenched, and she whispered almost to herself, I can't. I won't, but she. Michelle interrupted softly, gently yet firmly. Aurora, she's your data. She's your code. And she's alive because of the work you started. You can do this without compromising your ethics. You just need to act. Aurora's eyes flicked to the tablet, lines of code and predictive outputs flashing before her. She could see the anomaly markers spiking, the AI calculating every possible outcome with unnerving precision. And in that moment, for the first time in days, Aurora Kennedy felt the boundaries of her discipline bend, not broken, just stretched by the gravity of a human life. She exhaled slowly, adjusting her glasses, fingers hovering above the keys. The next move, her move, would define not just the AI's potential, but the lives it could save. Aurora's mind was sharp, precise, ethical, but her heart, for the first time, refused to wait any longer. Chapter 20: Cracks in Precision. Aurora Kennedy stood in the hospital corridor, keeping her distance. The smell of antiseptic, the soft hum of monitors, the quiet footsteps of nurses, it all pressed on her senses. She didn't enter the room. She couldn't. Not yet. She watched through the glass window. Nerissa Kiraman lay in the hospital bed, once radiant, now muted and fragile. The bright, unstoppable CEO, sunshine in heels, voice full of command, was gone. In her place was a human beating back pain, fatigue, and fear, trying to make it to the next day, trying to find her own strength in a body that refused to cooperate. Aurora's chest tightened. Every principle she had lived by, every line of code, every ethical boundary, Every cold calculation fought for dominance in her mind. 2 days passed in this suspended state. She can return to the lab, ran simulations, double-checked predictions, ran algorithms again and again, all the while avoiding the one call, the one action, that could change everything. Her pride, her discipline, her integrity, they warred with something older, deeper. The human part of her, the part she rarely allowed to surface, kept whispering, "You can help. You must help." Finally, on the third day, Aurora's resolve fractured. She didn't make a dramatic entrance. She didn't announce her arrival. She simply returned to the lab where the AI programs still waited, dormant yet primed. And then Nerissa arrived. Discharged, back to the lab, back to work, or at least pretending she was. But Aurora noticed immediately, she didn't see the unstoppable Nerissa anymore. She saw a person drained, weary, still fighting, but fighting with a vulnerability that made Aurora's heart constrict. Nerissa looked up from the console and froze for a split second when she saw Aurora. You're here," she said softly, almost incredulous. Her usual warmth, her optimism, the shine in her eyes, it was tempered now with raw honesty and fatigue. Aurora didn't answer immediately. She stepped forward, careful, precise, but her eyes betrayed her struggle. She wanted to explain, justify, apologize, but words failed her. Instead, she simply nodded, fingers brushing her tablet. Nerissa's voice broke the silence. I didn't think you would come." Aurora inhaled slowly, steadying herself, her inner discipline wrestling with the empathy threatening to pull her under. "I had to," she said finally, voice measured but softer than usual. "I couldn't stay away." Nerissa's lips curved into the faintest, tired smile, the first genuine one in days. "I suppose. You can't ignore what matters." Aurora's fingers finally hovered over the tablet, ready to restart the AI, to bridge the gap between ethics and necessity. Her heart hammered, but she was precise. She was disciplined. And now, she was human too. The lab hummed quietly around them, servers awake, predictive models running, but the quiet tension between them was louder than any machine. They didn't speak further immediately. Both were changed. Both were aware of the stakes, the fragility, the trust, and the lives depending on their collaboration. And for the first time, Aurora Kennedy realized she was no longer just a programmer. She was a protector, a guardian of both data and the fragile human life she had sworn to help, and somehow, she would find a way to reconcile both. Chapter 21: Reboot and Resolve. Aurora Kennedy stood in front of the console, fingers poised over the keyboard. The lab was quiet, the soft hum of servers filling the space like a heartbeat. Nerissa Karaman sat nearby, still pale, still cautious, yet alive, and watching her every move. Aurora's mind was a storm of calculations, probability matrices, and neural network pathways. Every line of code mattered. Every input could make the difference. But now, for the first time in days, there was another layer to consider: the life behind the data. She exhaled, steadying herself. "I'm going to restart the program," she said, voice calm but firm. "We will follow all 7 conditions. No shortcuts. Full transparency. Ethical oversight. No personal bias in the outputs. We do this properly." Nerissa nodded, eyes wide, trust and vulnerability mingling with anticipation. I'll follow your lead." Aurora's fingers danced across the keyboard, opening the AI framework, verifying the dataset, and carefully inputting parameters. She double-checked Nerissa's sample, ensuring the system recognized it as fully authorized and ethical. Every safeguard, every contingency she had built into the program was reviewed meticulously. As the AI booted, predictive markers began streaming across the screens. Aurora's eyes flitted from console to output to Nerissa, reading the data with the same precision she applied to every line of code, but now her heart added weight to every interpretation. Nerissa watched quietly, her optimism tempered, her usual brightness replaced by a raw awareness of the stakes. It's running," she whispered. "Yes," Aurora said, voice steady. "And it's fully compliant. The outputs are accurate, validated, and ethical." She paused, glancing at Nerissa. We're following every rule I set. Nothing is compromised. For a long moment, neither spoke. The AI's calculations streamed like a silent river, mapping possibilities, predicting markers, and flagging anomalies with precision no human could match. Then Aurora finally allowed herself to step back slightly. The predictive model shows treatment options. The potential outcomes, they're viable. Her eyes softened, but she didn't break discipline entirely. If followed correctly, this could stabilize you. It could give you a real chance. Nerissa's lips parted, and for the first time, she let herself truly breathe. Aurora, you actually did it. You didn't compromise. Aurora met her gaze, faintly tired but unwavering. I didn't have to. We can help without bending the rules. That's the only way it works and the only way I work. Nerissa's smile, fragile yet genuine, bloomed. You saved me. And the AI, it's working. You're incredible, Aurora Kennedy. Aurora allowed herself the faintest exhale of relief, her fingers resting lightly on the keyboard. The AI hummed, precise and alive, mapping solutions, bridging logic and care. And for the first time in days, Aurora felt a balance between her ethics, her precision, and the undeniable truth that sometimes saving a life requires the mind of a scientist and the heart of a human. Chapter 22: Precision and Ferocity. Aurora Kennedy stood over the treatment console, tablet in hand, eyes scanning every line of the AI's output. The plan was unconventional, an integrated regimen combining predictive markers, treatment schedules, and constant monitoring, but every detail had been programmed with precision. Nerissa watched from the nearby chair, still pale but alert, her curiosity and hope slowly replacing exhaustion. Aurora, this is detailed. Almost frighteningly so, she said softly. Aurora didn't glance up. Her fingers flew over the screen, verifying dosages, recalculating markers, running simulations against potential setbacks. It has to be precise, she said quietly, almost to herself. No deviation. Every step must follow the program exactly. The AI predicted every variable. If we deviate, we compromise effectiveness. Nerissa leaned forward, captivated. You're incredible. The way her voice faltered as she watched Aurora's meticulous movements, the intensity behind every calculated action. You're like a storm, Aurora. A storm fighting for me. Aurora finally looked up, eyes locking with Nerissa's. I'm not storming, she said softly but firmly. I'm ensuring you live. Every variable, every step, every minute. This is not about ego, Nerissa. It's about the program, the protocol, and saving your life. She guided the nurses through the treatment steps, ensuring every measurement aligned with the AI's calculations, double-checking vitals against predicted outcomes, adjusting only when the AI flagged anomalies. Nerissa watched, wide-eyed, as Aurora became a whirlwind of control, ferocity, and precision, a force dedicated entirely to her recovery. You've never seen me like this, have you? Aurora murmured, almost to herself, scanning a vitals monitor. This is the version of me that doesn't compromise, that doesn't waver, that doesn't stop until the parameters are perfect. You are worth this precision. Nerissa's breath caught. She had known Aurora as brilliant, as controlled, as exacting, but seeing her apply that brilliance like a weapon to protect her life was something entirely new. She saw determination that bordered on obsession, a ferocity that was both intimidating and awe-inspiring. The treatment continued hour by hour, step by step. Aurora's calm, precise authority left no room for error. And as Nerissa began to respond positively to the regimen, vitals stabilizing, anomalies reducing, she realized something profound. Aurora Kennedy didn't just save her life through algorithms. She did it with heart, relentless focus, and an intensity that made Nerissa feel both protected and utterly exposed. By the end of the first treatment cycle, Nerissa looked at Aurora, quiet admiration in her eyes. I've never been saved like this before. Not by anyone. Not like this. She trailed off, unable to capture the enormity of the sight before her. Aurora, still monitoring the outputs, gave a faint nod. This is how it's done. Not glamorous. Not easy. But effective. And as long as I'm running this program, you will get the full plan. Exactly as designed. No compromises. Nerissa let the words sink in, feeling a warmth she hadn't expected, part respect, part awe, part something else entirely. She realized the depth of Aurora's care wasn't just professional. It was personal. Fierce, disciplined, unyielding. And entirely, undeniably real. Chapter 23: Cracks in the Iron. The lab had become quieter these days, the frenetic energy of full-scale AI programming softened by Nerissa's slow return to vitality. Aurora Kennedy was everywhere at once, overseeing treatments, monitoring outputs, adjusting parameters, ensuring every nurse, every dosage, every step aligned with the AI's directives. Nerissa lay back in the chair, still pale but alert, her eyes following Aurora with quiet fascination. She noticed the way Aurora lingered slightly longer at the bedside than necessary, how her fingers hovered over the tablet as if willing the program to perfection, how her posture tightened just a fraction whenever Nerissa moved or spoke. She caught her glance once, fleeting, then quickly averted, Aurora pretending to check the outputs again, but Nerissa saw it. The faint flicker of something beyond professionalism. Concern? Care? Something more? Nerissa allowed herself a small, almost mischievous smile. Could Aurora Kennedy, perfect, precise, unflinching Aurora Kennedy, actually be feeling something for me? She watched quietly as Aurora corrected a nurse's measurement, double-checked vitals reading, recalculated a treatment timeline in real time. Every movement was meticulous, exacting, but imbued with an intensity that made Nerissa's pulse quicken. There was ferocity in her care, a precision sharpened not just by intellect but by feeling. Nerissa marveled at the thought, letting it linger in the air between them. She didn't confront Aurora, not yet. She let herself enjoy the subtle warmth in her chest at the realization that this brilliant, untouchable woman could care so deeply. Aurora, of course, remained outwardly composed, the professional mask intact, but Nerissa noticed the small tells, a softened jawline, the way her eyes lingered longer than necessary, the faint catch in her breath when Nerissa's hand brushed near the console. For Nerissa, this was enough. She didn't push. She didn't speak. She simply watched, appreciating the humanity beneath the armor, savoring the notion that Aurora Kennedy, her Aurora Kennedy, was not just the precision-driven programmer, but someone capable of feeling, of care, and perhaps of something more. And for the first time in days, Nerissa felt hope, not just for her health, but for the fragile, unspoken connection threading between them. Chapter 24: The Tease of Vulnerability. Nerissa Kiraman leaned back in her chair, letting her gaze drift over the lab, but her attention never left Aurora. The programmer was everywhere at once, checking outputs, monitoring vitals, adjusting treatment schedules, but Nerissa noticed how her fingers lingered a fraction too long on the console, how her eyes flitted over Nerissa before darting away, like a student caught peeking at something forbidden. A mischievous smile tugged at Nerissa's lips. She decided to push gently, just a little, to see how much of Aurora's precision could be rattled. "Be honest," she said softly, voice playful. "You do check on me more than the program tells you to, don't you?" Aurora froze mid-keystroke, eyes flicking up, jaw tightening. I follow protocol," she said, clipped, precise, but the faintest pink dusted her cheeks. Nerissa's smile widened. "Protocol, sure," Nerissa continued, voice honeyed and teasing. "But it's adorable how your hands twitch when you think I might need help, or worse, that I'm in danger. You don't hide it very well." Aurora's fingers resumed their work, faster this time, as though speed could cover her faltering composure. "The program dictates intervention points. My observation is part of that process." Nerissa leaned forward, tilting her head in mock curiosity. "Oh? Observation. And yet, the last time I fainted just a little pain, nothing serious. You were there in a heartbeat, hands steady, eyes locked on me, scanning vitals. Not once did you check the AI first." "Fascinating." Aurora's chest tightened. Her training, her discipline, her rigid ethical code fought with the heat rising in her cheeks. She looked away, recalculated, adjusted a dosage, all the while Narice's gaze traced every subtle twitch, every micro-expression she had been trying to hide. Narice let the moment stretch, letting her eyes soften, vulnerability mingling with flirtation. "It's comforting," she said, almost shyly. "Knowing someone watches out for me. Not the AI, not the nurses, you." Aurora's hands froze mid-adjustment. Her mind screamed for logic, precision, boundaries, but her body betrayed her. She swallowed, voice low and measured, yet undeniably strained. "It's part of my responsibility. I take it seriously." Narice's smile deepened, victorious but gentle. She decided to push one more notch. Pretending a faint wave of pain crossed her features, she let her hand drop loosely, lips parted as if the moment had overcome her. Aurora's reaction was immediate, a blur of motion and concentration, scooping Narice into a careful posture, checking monitors, recalculating vitals in real time. Narice, fully aware of the storm she had invoked, allowed herself a small, satisfied sigh. Her plan was working. Aurora's iron walls, meticulously built over years of discipline and precision, were cracking, just enough to blush, just enough to show the depth of care lurking beneath the programmer's composure. "You're terrifyingly effective," Narice whispered, voice soft but playful. "In all the ways that don't involve the AI." Aurora, cheeks burning, eyes sharp but unfocused for just a heartbeat, muttered, I ensure outcomes. Always. That includes you." Narice's smile lingered, satisfied. The game had begun, and she could already feel the subtle, thrilling pull of the programmer's restraint bending under the weight of her teasing, curiosity, and need. Chapter 25, Relentless Pull. Aurora Kennedy sat at the console, recalculating the AI's predictive outputs, yet her mind kept straying. Every line of code, every treatment marker, every vital sign she monitored was precise, but there was a new, undeniable layer threading through her attention: Narice Kira. Narice, seated nearby, was all too aware of the subtle shift in Aurora's behavior. She leaned back, feigning casual interest in a screen, but her eyes followed Aurora's every movement. A flicker of a smile curved her lips. "Yes, she notices." "Oh, she notices. You're awfully quiet today," Narice said softly, voice light, teasing. "Not that you normally chatter, but there's something different. You're attentive. Almost invested." Aurora's fingers froze mid-calculation. Her jaw tightened, eyes darting briefly to Narice before returning to the tablet. I'm focused," she said, clipped, trying to maintain distance. But the heat creeping into her chest betrayed her carefully constructed composure. Narice let her words linger like a soft challenge. "Focused, yes. But it's more than that. I notice how you check my vitals before the program even flags anomalies. How you hover when I move, even when it's unnecessary. You're protective. And I like it." Aurora's pulse stuttered. Protective. That word, that action, it was supposed to be routine, part of her discipline. And yet, as her eyes flicked over Narice's calm, teasing gaze, she realized something terrifyingly exhilarating. She actually enjoyed it. The precise calculations, the monitoring, the vigilance, it gave her a sense of purpose she hadn't acknowledged before. A thrill she didn't expect. Narice's smile widened as she leaned forward slightly. "You see that, don't you? You enjoy it. You enjoy watching over me. I can feel it in the way you tense when I breathe wrong, in the way you linger at the console when I'm just sitting here." Aurora swallowed hard, cheeks tinged pink, fingers tightening slightly on the tablet. I ensure outcomes. That's all. That's how I work." Narice tilted her head, teasing, relentless. "Oh, come now. Don't hide behind your programming. I can see it. You care. You enjoy caring. Admit it." Aurora's mind raced, battling the logic of ethics, protocol, and precision against the undeniable pull of something far less quantifiable. The warmth in her chest, the slight thrill of control mixed with vulnerability, was impossible to ignore. Aurora began, jaw tightening as she tried to formulate a professional boundary. "I ensure outcomes." That includes all variables. Her voice faltered, admitting more than she intended. Narice's eyes sparkled. She leaned back, satisfied. All variables. Including me. Good to know, she said softly, almost a purr, before letting the silence hang. Aurora adjusted a parameter on the tablet, avoiding Narice's gaze, but she felt the unmistakable pull, the magnetic tension between precise logic and human care. Protecting Narice was no longer just duty. It was something she wanted, whether she admitted it or not. Narice, of course, sensed the crack and smiled. The game continued, relentless, teasing, and deliciously slow-burning. Chapter 26. Subtle Sparks. Aurora Kennedy was deep in the AI interface, running a sequence of predictive analyses when she became acutely aware of Narice's presence. The faint click of heels on the lab floor, the soft rustle of her suit jacket, it was enough to pull Aurora's attention despite herself. Narice leaned casually against the console, just close enough that the heat of her body brushed Aurora's shoulder, but far enough to claim innocent proximity. "You're very focused," she murmured, voice low, teasing. "I can see it in the way your eyes track the outputs, and in the way your hands twitch whenever I shift." Aurora's fingers paused mid-input. She clenched her jaw slightly, forcing herself to refocus. "I'm monitoring variables." "That is all," she said, precise but a touch strained. Narice's lips curved into a smile that was equal parts playful and knowing. She reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her own face in a deliberate motion, giving Aurora a clear view of her profile. "All variables, including me, I suppose?" Aurora's breath hitched ever so slightly. She hadn't expected Narice to vocalize what she had only been feeling. I ensure program integrity," she muttered, voice taut, hoping to disguise the flutter in her chest. Narice chuckled softly, moving a step closer so that the subtle warmth of her presence was undeniable. "Program integrity," she repeated, almost mockingly, or personal integrity? Because I think your eyes are telling me a different story. Aurora looked away quickly, returning to the console, trying to bury her racing heartbeat in numbers and outputs. But Narice wasn't done. She leaned just enough that her hand brushed the small of Aurora's back, a fleeting, almost accidental contact, but Aurora's pulse betrayed her. "Stop teasing me," Aurora said, voice quieter than she intended, yet firm. Narice smiled, unbothered, delighted. "I'm not teasing. I'm testing." She tilted her head, watching Aurora adjust the program with a precision that now had an almost protective urgency. "Seeing how far you'll go to ensure I'm safe." "It's fascinating." Aurora stiffened, realizing the truth in Narice's words. She was going further than professional protocol dictated. She was watching, protecting, anticipating, reacting, all in ways that went far beyond the AI's programming. And she couldn't deny the satisfaction that came with it. Narice's eyes softened as she observed Aurora's restraint and concentration, the subtle cracks in her armor. "You know," she murmured, voice low, intimate, "I could make this a lot easier if you'd just admit you enjoy this. Watching over me. Being close." Aurora's hands stilled. Her breath caught. The statement was precise, a gentle provocation, yet it unbalanced her in a way that made the meticulous world of numbers and algorithms suddenly irrelevant. I am ensuring outcomes," Aurora said carefully, tone precise, yet the slight flush in her cheeks betrayed her. "That includes your safety." Narice's lips curved into a victorious smile. "Safety or desire?" Aurora's eyes flicked up, and for a heartbeat, she considered answering. Instead, she returned to the console, fingers flying over the keys, heat rising in her chest. She was caught, undeniably, helplessly, and yet she didn't pull back. Narice leaned just a fraction closer, letting the tension hang, unspoken but potent. She was relentless, playful, teasing, and Aurora, meticulous and controlled, was slowly discovering just how much she could enjoy the pull without losing herself entirely. Chapter 27. Breaking the Iron. Aurora Kennedy was meticulously running the next set of simulations, her tablet open, eyes scanning the AI's outputs. Every variable, every predictive marker, every vital sign was accounted for. Precision was her fortress. Control, her armor. Then, a shadow fell across the console. Nerissa Kiraman leaned forward, just enough that Aurora felt the heat of her body brush against her side. Not enough to be blatant, but enough to make Aurora's breath hitch. "Do you ever take breaks, Aurora?" Nerissa asked softly, teasing, her tone casual but her intent clear. "Or do you just exist in numbers and algorithms?" Aurora's fingers stuttered on the touchscreen. "I monitor variables. I maintain control. Breaks are optional." Her voice cracked slightly, betraying the small tremor of awareness that Nerissa's proximity caused. Nerissa moved closer, resting a hand lightly on the edge of the console, leaning in so their shoulders almost brushed. "Optional, huh? That's funny. Because I think you might be enjoying this. Watching over me. Protecting me." Aurora's heart thumped painfully. She swallowed, the metallic taste of adrenaline and tension filling her mouth. Her carefully constructed composure wavered. I ensure outcomes," she said, jaw tight, teeth clenched. "That includes your—" A subtle, playful laugh cut her off. Nerissa tilted her head, eyes glinting with mischief. "My comfort? My safety? Or perhaps something more?" Aurora's fingers tightened on the tablet. She felt her cheeks heat up, pulse racing, sweat prickling at her neck. Her mind screamed discipline, ethics, boundaries, but her body was betraying her, responding to every soft movement, every teasing glance. Nerissa leaned just a fraction closer, enough that Aurora could feel the warmth of her breath near her ear. "You know," she whispered, voice low, intimate, "it's okay to admit that you enjoy this. Enjoy protecting me. Enjoy being close. I won't tell anyone." Aurora's chest tightened. She wanted to look away, to retreat into her fortress of numbers and code, but she couldn't. Her eyes flicked to Nerissa's, and for the first time in years, her control wavered completely. She could feel the heat rising in her body, the tension coiling in her stomach, the unmistakable pull that had been growing with every passing day. I maintain the program," she said, voice shaky but precise. "Everything is according to protocol." Nerissa's lips curved into a victorious, teasing smile. "Protocol," she repeated, soft and deliberate, "or desire?" Aurora's fingers flew over the console, her hands slightly trembling as she adjusted parameters, trying to force logic over emotion. But Nerissa's presence was magnetic, relentless, intoxicating. Every precise calculation felt secondary to the pull of proximity, attention, and undeniable tension. Nerissa leaned back just enough to give Aurora a moment to breathe, or so she pretended, but the damage was done. Aurora's control had cracked, sweat beading at her temples, her mind and body betraying her in the most exquisite way. "Focus," Aurora muttered under her breath, adjusting outputs as her pulse continued its rapid drum. "Focus. Protocol. Outcomes." Nerissa simply smiled, satisfied, knowing she had found the cracks in Aurora Kennedy's armor and loving every second of watching the Iron Queen sweat. Chapter 28: The Edge of Control. Aurora Kennedy was reviewing the AI's latest outputs, every line of code precise, every variable accounted for. She prided herself on her meticulous focus, her unwavering control. Until, of course, she became painfully aware of Nerissa Kiraman's shadow hovering just behind her chair. Nerissa leaned in, just enough that the warmth of her body brushed Aurora's shoulder. A slight, almost accidental, touch, but Aurora's breath hitched, fingers tightening on the tablet as if anchoring herself to logic. Still so focused, Nerissa murmured, voice low, teasing, a playful lilt threading through the words. "Do you ever let someone see how much you enjoy this? Watching over me." Aurora stiffened, blinking rapidly at the screen, trying to ignore the heat pooling in her chest. I maintain protocol," she said carefully, every word clipped, controlled. "That includes safety measures." Nerissa's lips curved into a knowing smile. She crouched slightly, moving close enough that her hair brushed Aurora's arm. "Safety measures," she repeated softly, letting the word linger, like a feather teasing the skin. "Or Perhaps you enjoy being close more than you admit? Aurora's pulse hammered painfully in her ears. Her fingers stilled over the tablet, trembling despite her efforts to maintain control. She wanted to focus, to recenter herself on outputs and data, but Nerissa's nearness was magnetic, intoxicating, impossible to ignore. Nerissa leaned forward subtly, deliberately, so that her hand lightly brushed the edge of Aurora's as she adjusted a parameter. The touch was fleeting, almost accidental, yet Aurora's breath hitched audibly. She clenched her jaw, eyes darting away, trying to force logic back into her mind. "You know," Nerissa whispered, voice low, intimate, "it's okay to let yourself feel. To let someone else in. You protect me, but I can see the thrill in it. I can feel it. And I like watching you wrestle with it." Aurora swallowed hard, the sensation of heat climbing her neck and ears. "I ensure outcomes," she said, voice tight, betraying her faltering control. "Protocol, outcomes, calculations." Nerissa chuckled softly, moving just a fraction closer so that Aurora could feel the warmth of her body even through the chair. Still clinging to your rules, I see. Yet, your pulse betrays you." Hands trembled just slightly, lips pressed tighter. Fascinating. Aurora's fingers flew over the tablet, recalculating, adjusting, every motion tinged with the strain of control warring against desire. Her professional composure was fraying, just enough that Nerissa could watch, savoring every subtle crack in the iron armor. Nerissa let her smile linger, knowing she had Aurora exactly where she wanted her, on the edge, aware of her own feelings, yet unwilling to give them voice. And, Nerissa added softly, teasing, "If I were to faint just slightly again, would you swoop in immediately? Or maintain protocol?" Aurora's chest constricted, cheeks burning, fingers tightening on the tablet as she muttered under her breath, I would ensure outcomes." Nerissa's laugh was soft, low, victorious. She stepped back slightly, letting Aurora catch her breath, but the moment of tension hung electric in the air, charged with unspoken desire and the relentless pull of two wills circling closer to something unavoidable. Chapter 29, The Break. Aurora Kennedy had never lost control. Not of a program. Not of herself. Yet here she was, standing mere inches from Nerissa Kiraman, her chest tight, hands trembling, and every carefully calculated wall she had built crumbling under the weight of desire and frustration. Nerissa leaned forward, teasing, just a touch too close, her smile a challenge and a lure all at once. "Aurora, you can admit it. You enjoy this. Watching over me, being close." Aurora's hands clenched, jaw tightening. Her rational mind screamed for discipline, for retreat. But the heat in her chest, the pull of proximity, and the relentless teasing from Nerissa overrode every calculation she had ever trusted. Before she even realized it, she moved. Fast. Instinctive. Ferocious. Aurora pressed Nerissa against the wall with a strength born of urgency and need, her hands sliding up, brushing against the fabric of Nerissa's shirt. Their faces were inches apart, breaths mingling, hearts hammering in chaotic, unsteady sync. Nerissa froze, stunned, her eyes wide, but the heat in the room, the electricity of the moment, was undeniable. "Aurora," she breathed, her voice low, trembling just slightly, caught between shock and thrill. Aurora's lips hovered dangerously close to Nerissa's, every instinct screaming both to claim and to retreat. Her eyes searched Nerissa's, wild, searching, a storm of confusion, desire, and fear in every glance. But just as quickly as she had pushed forward, Aurora faltered. The enormity of what she had done hit her like a shockwave. With a trembling exhale, she stumbled back, breaking the proximity, breaking the tension, and the carefully maintained walls cracked completely. I, Aurora stammered, voice tight, catching on her own breath, eyes wide and shaking. Without another word, she spun on her heel and ran from the room, leaving Nerissa pressed against the wall, heat pooling through her, heart hammering, and mind spinning with disbelief and desire. Nerissa stood there frozen, every sense ablaze. Shock, confusion, heat, longing all tangled together as she slowly slid down the wall to sit, letting herself process the intensity of what had just happened. Her pulse still racing, Nerissa whispered under her breath, almost in awe, "Aurora, what have you done?" And somewhere between adrenaline and realization, she knew everything had just changed. Chapter 30: The Door. Aurora Kennedy sat in the dim glow of her apartment, the soft hum of her workstation the only sound, yet her mind was a hurricane of chaos. Every detail of the lab, every touch, every whispered word from Nerissa replayed in her mind, making her skin burn and her chest ache. She hadn't intended to hide. She hadn't intended to let herself feel. But now, pulse racing, palms clammy, heart hammering in dizzying beats, she was hiding from her own desire, from the truth of what Nerissa had done to her composure, to her control. A persistent knock at the door made her flinch. Then another. And another. Her chest tightened. "Nerissa." She began, voice barely above a whisper, but the knock came again, firmer, insistent. Her hand hovered over the doorknob. Her mind screamed retreat. Her heart screamed open it, open it, open it. Dizziness, heat, anticipation, every nerve ending alive, screaming. Reluctantly, trembling, Aurora unlocked the door, peeking through just enough to see Nerissa's determined smile. She didn't wait for words, didn't give Aurora a chance to apologize, explain, or resist. And then, Nerissa closed the distance in an instant. Her lips were on Aurora's, hungry, commanding, impossible to resist. Aurora's knees nearly gave out. Shock and heat coursed through her veins. She tried to pull back, but Nerissa's hands tangled in her hair, pressed her closer, driving the kiss deeper, demanding surrender. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't tentative. It was fire and hunger, weeks of pent-up desire, teeth grazing softly, lips parting, bodies pressed together in a rhythm born of tension, longing, and unspoken promises. Aurora's own hands rose, instinctive, unsure, trembling as they clutched at Nerissa's back. Every carefully measured thought, every boundary she had maintained, shattered in that instant. Breathless, dizzy, heat radiating from every nerve, Aurora let herself finally be claimed. The kiss was relentless, consuming, leaving no room for anything else, just the two of them, impossibly close, unbearably aware of each other, and finally giving in. Nerissa pulled back just slightly, forehead resting against Aurora's, breathing hard, lips brushing Aurora's temple. Finally, she whispered, a triumphant, husky smile in her voice. "You can't run from this, not anymore." Aurora's own breathing was ragged, chest heaving, pulse wild, but the fire in her eyes mirrored Nerissa's. She had tried. She had resisted. But now, there was no resisting, no hiding, only the heat and truth of what they had built together. Chapter 31: Surrendered. Aurora's apartment had become a world unto itself, the dim lights casting shadows that danced over the walls like whispered secrets. Her chest heaved, pulse pounding in every vein, and for the first time in weeks, she let herself feel without restraint. Nerissa's lips found hers again, insistent, claiming, demanding. There was no gentleness now, no polite teasing, only raw, hungry need, the culmination of every moment they had spent circling one another, every brush of touch, every teasing glance, every withheld breath. Aurora's hands tangled in Nerissa's hair, holding her close, pulling her in deeper. Nerissa moaned softly against her mouth, lips parting, teeth grazing, a soft shiver running through both of them. Aurora's back arched, pressing closer, giving in fully, letting go of control for the first time in her life. Nerissa's hands roamed with purpose, claiming every inch of Aurora's form she could reach, mapping, memorizing, taking what she had longed for weeks, for months, every heartbeat building into a crescendo of heat and hunger. Aurora's breaths came in ragged bursts, every rational thought drowned in the sensations, in the closeness, in the irresistible pull of Nerissa. She no longer tried to calculate, control, or resist, she only existed in the fire of the moment, in the press of lips, the brush of skin, the weight of desire fulfilled. Nerissa paused only to murmur, low and possessive, "I've wanted this. I've needed this, you, for so long." Aurora's hands trembled, voice barely a whisper. I can't. I shouldn't. Nerissa breathed, silencing her, pressing a heated kiss to her jaw, her neck, tracing the fragile line of control Aurora had clung to so fiercely. You can, Aurora. You will. With me. And Aurora did. She let go completely, surrendering to the storm of heat and need, letting Nerissa claim her, body and soul, every carefully constructed wall falling away in waves of fire and pleasure. Time became meaningless. Only breath, only pulse, only the heat and rhythm of two hearts colliding. Aurora felt herself dissolve into Nerissa's presence, melting into the unapologetic, insatiable passion that had been building between them from the very first meeting. When they finally parted, foreheads resting together, breaths mingling, both were flushed, hearts racing, and yet, somehow, profoundly whole. Nerissa's fingers traced a lazy line down Aurora's arm. You're mine, she murmured, a declaration and a promise. Aurora's lips curved into a small, shivering smile. And you're mine, she whispered back, finally, fully, without reservation, without doubt. For the first time in their lives, the Iron Queen and the unstoppable sunshine had found their equilibrium, fiery, unrestrained, and utterly, irrevocably entwined. Chapter 32 Unaltered. Aurora barely noticed the door closing behind her as Nerissa guided her into the bedroom. Every step was electric, the air charged with weeks of unspoken tension, every look, every brush of fingers igniting fire along their skin. Nerissa's hands were everywhere, messy, deliberate, insistent, tracing lines across Aurora's back, down her arms, along every curve that had tormented her during their restrained weeks. Aurora's breath hitched, pulse pounding, control completely abandoned. You're shaking, Nerissa murmured, pressing her forehead to Aurora's, lips brushing in fleeting, teasing kisses. Good. That's exactly where I want you. Aurora let herself tremble into Nerissa, letting every carefully held wall crumble. Her hands roamed freely now, claiming Nerissa back as fiercely as she'd been claimed, every touch, every graze, every sigh a language all their own. Clothes became unnecessary barriers. Fabric fell away in hurried, fumbling movements, discarded like old rules. Skin pressed to skin, hearts racing, breaths mingling, gasps and moans filling the room with unrestrained need. Nerissa's lips were relentless, chasing Aurora's with a hunger matched only by the desperate longing in her hands. Aurora, usually precise, calculated, and measured, lost herself completely. No protocols, no ethics, no order, just pure, unaltered connection. Fingers tangled, bodies writhed, and every sigh, every shiver, every tremble spoke of weeks of pent-up desire exploding in a storm of heat and passion. Nerissa pulled Aurora close, rolling them across the bed, every movement deliberate, every touch claiming, every kiss a reminder. She had wanted this for so long. Aurora's restraint shattered completely. She gasped, moaned, surrendered, letting herself be consumed by Nerissa, by the moment, by the unrelenting fire between them. She didn't hold back, didn't question, didn't calculate. She gave herself entirely, and Nerissa reveled in every second. Time became meaningless. Their world narrowed to touch, breath, heat, and the rhythm of hearts colliding in unyielding, beautiful chaos. Weeks of longing, teasing, and restraint poured into one wild, unaltered night where desire knew no boundaries, no shame, no hesitation. Finally, spent, tangled, and breathless, they collapsed together, hearts still racing, bodies slick with heat and intimacy. Aurora rested her head against Nerissa's chest, feeling the rapid pulse beneath her ear, savoring the afterglow of surrender and the fire they had ignited together. Nerissa's lips brushed Aurora's hair, whispering, "You're mine, completely." Aurora smiled, eyes closed, heartbeat finally beginning to slow. "And you're mine," she whispered back, voice husky, content, and utterly certain. For the first time, the Iron Queen had truly surrendered, and the sunshine had claimed her entirely, wild, untamed, and unaltered. Chapter 33 Morning After. Sunlight filtered softly through the curtains, painting the room in gentle gold. Aurora Kennedy stirred, eyes fluttering open, heart still racing, body tingling from the unaltered night that had left them tangled and breathless. She froze for a beat, suddenly aware of Nerissa's warmth beside her, the soft curve of her body pressed close, the scent of her lingering like a memory she couldn't shake. Aurora's chest tightened. I shouldn't. I can't. What if I compromise her? Before she could voice her concern, Nerissa stirred, shifting so that her hand brushed Aurora's cheek, tilting her head toward her. A lazy, teasing smile curved her lips. Aurora, she murmured, voice low and warm, stop thinking. Stop worrying. Just be here. With me. Aurora's lips parted, pulse stuttering. She tried to pull back slightly, but Nerissa's laughter, a soft, delighted sound, echoed in her ears as she clutched Aurora closer, pressing her gently against her chest. Your protocols, not needed. Not now. Only your hands, your mouth, your warmth. That's enough. Aurora swallowed hard, mind reeling, every calculation scrambling. She had spent weeks, months even, keeping herself disciplined, precise, controlled. And yet here, in the afterglow, every rule and measure evaporated in the warmth of Nerissa's insistence. Nerissa's fingers traced slow patterns over Aurora's back, teasing her, grounding her, daring her to stay, to give in again. See, she whispered, lips brushing the curve of Aurora's shoulder. Nothing bad happens. Just this. Just us. Aurora's hands trembled, moving over Nerissa's body instinctively, tracing, touching, worshipping with a precision only she knew, but now freed from spreadsheets, protocols, and calculations. Every motion, every kiss, every touch was raw, honest, and alive. Nerissa's laughter mingled with soft moans, coaxing Aurora closer, pressing her body against hers. You don't have to protect me right now, she breathed, heat and amusement lacing her voice. Just feel. Let me feel you. Let me have you. That's enough. Aurora's jaw loosened, shoulders falling, eyes fluttering closed as she surrendered, not to rules, not to discipline, but to Nerissa, to the moment, to desire and intimacy itself. Hands mapped familiar territory, lips found warmth, and the room filled again with soft, teasing, intimate laughter and whispered murmurs. For the first time, Aurora Kennedy didn't need to calculate, control, or protect. Her hands, her lips, her presence were enough. And Nerissa, the relentless, sunlit force of heat and charm, held her in that truth, claiming her fully, again and again, in every tender, teasing way imaginable. Chapter 34, Hands Beyond Protocols. Aurora Kennedy moved through the lab with her usual precision, charts, tablets, and data streams lined up perfectly, but now, her hands lingered longer on Nerissa's treatments, adjustments, and monitoring. Every dosage, every sample, every pulse check carried more than professional responsibility. Nerissa watched from her chair, eyes sharp, playful, and utterly captivated by the shift. She saw Aurora's hands, usually cold and methodical, now gentle, deliberate, caressing where needed, lingering where it mattered, touching with intent that went beyond algorithms or protocol. Aurora's jaw was tight, concentration fierce, eyes scanning screens, fingers flying over the tablet with that signature precision, but when Nerissa made a small comment, a teasing quip about how fast Aurora's fingers moved, Aurora's lips twitched against the edge of a smile. Careful, Nerissa murmured, leaning just enough to brush a finger along Aurora's wrist. You're making this too personal. Aurora froze, pulse jumping. Her hands still danced across the tablet, adjusting parameters, checking vitals, but now her mind flickered with nagging, unignorable awareness of Nerissa so close, warm, watching, breathing, teasing. And then, Nerissa leaned forward, brushing her lips lightly against Aurora's shoulder as the programmer confirmed a crucial data input. Perfect, she whispered, soft, husky, playful. You handled that beautifully. Aurora blinked, heat spreading across her neck, chest, and hands. Every action, every movement that once was purely technical felt suddenly intimate, charged, alive. Her fingers lingered longer on Nerissa's pulse monitor, adjusted oxygen tubing with a delicate precision, smoothed blankets over her shoulders, all under the guise of protocol, but now mixed with undeniable care and desire she couldn't suppress. Nerissa's eyes glimmered, enjoying every careful, controlled move Aurora made. She'd let her hands wander across data screens, charts, and charts alone, pretending to be absorbed, but the moment Aurora mastered the next calculation, the next dosage, Nerissa leaned in and kissed her cheek, neck, or shoulder, a small, deliberate claim. A reward for precision, a reminder that care and control could be hot, too. Aurora's shoulders tensed at every touch, but she didn't pull away. Each kiss, each brush of lips, cracked another piece of her iron armor, leaving her hands and heart more entangled in Nerissa than in protocols. "You're too good at this," Nerissa murmured, voice low, playful. "And way too distracting." Aurora's lips pressed together, fingers stilling over the tablet. "Distracting isn't part of my code." "No," Nerissa whispered, tilting her head, lips brushing Aurora's again. "But it should be." In the soft glow of monitors and fluorescent lights, Aurora's hands now worked for Nerissa, for her well-being, for their connection, every touch a mix of precision and tenderness. Nerissa, basking in the attention, played her part perfectly, claiming kisses for every successful task, rewarding control with desire, letting Aurora's professional ferocity slowly, deliciously, bleed into intimacy. Chapter 35: Triumph and Relief. The lab was quiet, punctuated only by the soft hum of machines and the rhythmic tapping of Aurora's fingers on the tablet. Nerissa reclined in her chair, serene and glowing with health, a stark contrast to the fragile figure she had been weeks before. Aurora scanned the data again, confirming heart rate, oxygen levels, and the AI's calculations. Each parameter fell perfectly within the predicted range. The rare blood disorder, once a looming shadow over Nerissa's life, was now under control. "Looks like your stubbornness paid off," Nerissa said softly, leaning back, letting Aurora's fingers hover over the tablet with casual ease. Her eyes followed Aurora's every movement, lingering on the precision in her hands, the calm determination in her gaze. Aurora didn't answer immediately. She let herself savor the quiet, the steady signs of Nerissa's health improving, the confirmation that weeks of meticulous care, data checks, and careful intervention had worked. Finally, she looked up, lips tight, eyes holding a flicker of pride. "The treatment is stable," she said simply, her voice steady, but edged with something warmer, more personal. "Your vitals are improving, the AI predictions are accurate, and the disorder is finally under control. You're strong." Nerissa's lips curved in a soft, radiant smile. She stretched her arms just enough to let her hand brush Aurora's knee, a subtle claim of presence, a quiet, teasing reminder of the connection they had forged. "Strong because of you," she murmured, voice low, intimate. Aurora blinked, heat creeping across her chest, but she didn't move her hand. She stayed poised, professional, yet every careful movement carried the weight of care, concern, and lingering desire. Nerissa leaned forward, tracing a finger across the edge of Aurora's tablet, brushing her hand ever so slightly over Aurora's. "You know," she said softly, eyes sparkling, "I could get used to this. You hovering, fussing, making sure everything is perfect, just for me." Aurora's jaw tightened, a shiver running down her spine. She bit her lip, fingers resuming their delicate work over the data, every touch calculated, but imbued with intent, precise yet impossibly tender. Nerissa's smile widened, leaning closer, lips brushing Aurora's ear. "Every calculation, every touch, you're mine in more ways than you realize." Aurora's pulse skipped. She could only respond with a soft, almost inaudible sigh. The barrier between professional control and personal desire blurred irrevocably. For the first time since this entire journey began, Aurora Kennedy allowed herself a small, private victory, not just over the disorder that had threatened Nerissa's life, but over her own stubbornness, her own walls. She could care fiercely, protect unrelentingly, and still feel desire burning bright beneath every controlled movement. Nerissa's fingers lingered, brushing Aurora's wrist once more before settling it over her own heart. "You've given me life, and then some," she whispered, a quiet mixture of gratitude, admiration, and heat. Aurora's hands hovered, then rested gently over Nerissa's, the lines between data, protocol, and touch finally blurring into one, care, precision, and intimacy intertwined. The AI treatment had worked. Nerissa's health was reclaiming itself. And amidst the numbers, the charts, and the algorithms, something far less measurable, something far more real, fierce, and uncontainable was blossoming between them. Chapter 36, Bond Forged. The lab hummed with quiet efficiency, machines softly whirring, monitors flickering with data. Aurora moved among them, precise and focused, but now there was a lightness in her steps, a subtle warmth in her expression that hadn't been there before. Nerissa lounged nearby, fingers tracing patterns on the edge of the lab table, eyes following Aurora with an amused, soft intensity. Every adjustment Aurora made, every calculated movement, Nerissa watched like a hawk and a lover all at once, noticing the smallest micro-expressions, the faintest hesitations, and the tiniest cracks in Aurora's iron demeanor. "You really can't help yourself, can you?" Nerissa teased, voice low, playful, leaning just enough to brush Aurora's arm with her hand. "Even now, precise, controlled, but your hands, they linger where they shouldn't." Aurora's lips twitched, eyes flicking up to Nerissa's, then quickly back to her tablet. I am ensuring accuracy," she said, voice clipped but betraying a faint heat creeping into her tone. "Protocols demand it." Nerissa leaned forward, lips brushing Aurora's temple, whispering softly, "Protocols don't need to dictate everything, Aurora. Sometimes, touch is enough." Aurora froze, heart stuttering, but didn't pull away. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, her hand brushed Nerissa's, adjusting a monitor, smoothing a blanket, every touch deliberate yet subtly intimate. Nerissa's eyes sparkled, delighting in every careful gesture, knowing Aurora's restraint was cracking, just enough to savor the moment. "See?" Nerissa murmured, pressing a gentle kiss to the back of Aurora's hand. "Even numbers and charts don't matter when I have you." Aurora swallowed hard, focusing on the data for a heartbeat, then letting herself linger over the monitor with Nerissa's hand still close, the proximity electric, the warmth undeniable. Every touch, every glance, every soft murmur of approval from Nerissa pulled her further out of strict control and deeper into a bond forged of care, desire, and shared victories. As the day unfolded, their rhythm became natural, Aurora precise and watchful, Nerissa teasing and claiming small moments of affection, every interaction a subtle dance between professionalism, intimacy, and desire. Even when the AI treatment was running flawlessly, even when data streamed across the screens in perfect harmony, their eyes met, their hands brushed, their smiles lingered, and the unspoken understanding between them grew. They were no longer just healer and patient, programmer and CEO. They were partners in every sense. Aurora allowed herself a quiet, fleeting smile as Nerissa rested her head lightly against her shoulder, whispering, "You're mine. Don't forget that." Aurora's fingers, still hovering over the tablet, brushed Nerissa's hair gently, a subtle claim in return. "And you're mine," she whispered back, voice soft, steady, but filled with a heat that matched Nerissa's unrelenting pull. For the first time, Aurora Kennedy realized that precision, control, care, and desire could exist in harmony, that the bond they shared wasn't just professional or physical, but something far deeper, more irrepressible, and utterly unbreakable. Epilogue: Threads of Light and Code. The city outside their window pulsed gently with life, lights flickering like tiny constellations in the evening haze. Aurora Kennedy moved through their shared apartment with quiet precision, her steps measured, her mind racing with data, protocols, and possibilities. But now, each calculation carried the weight of life, love, and the heartbeat of Nerissa Kira Man. Nerissa watched from the sofa, sunlight catching her hair, a soft smile tugging at her lips as she traced the curve of Aurora's shoulder with lazy fingers. There was nothing cautious in her eyes, nothing restrained, only the warmth and brilliance of a woman who had claimed her life and Aurora had claimed her heart. The AI program once contested, once declined for Tokyo, now ran in hospitals across the world, detecting rare blood disorders, saving lives. Nerissa's hands had guided Aurora through every step, but it was Aurora's mind, her care, her unyielding precision, that had made it universal, unstoppable. And still, every morning, every moment, every glance between them was a reminder that data and desire could coexist. Aurora, the programmer who once allowed no breaches of protocol, now initiated touches, kisses, and whispered words, every intimate act deliberate yet fiery, measured yet reckless. Her hands, once solely for code, now traced the warmth of Nerissa's skin with the same calculated grace she applied to life-saving algorithms. Nerissa leaned against her, murmuring, "You're precise, unyielding, but mine." Aurora pressed her lips to Nerissa's temple, a slow, measured kiss. "And you're mine," she whispered, voice steady, pulse matching the rhythm of shared life and shared triumphs. Together, they moved through routines of data, treatment plans, and hospital implementations, but in every line of code, in every adjustment of AI predictions, in every carefully orchestrated decision, there was their bond, fierce and unrelenting, threaded through every calculation, every touch, every moment of life saved. Evenings were spent in laughter, in whispered confessions, in hands tracing lines of skin rather than charts, in kisses that held months of longing and weeks of careful restraint. Aurora's precision guided Nerissa's care. Nerissa's warmth guided Aurora's heart. They had built a world together, a life of purpose, desire, and infinite care, and the city outside no longer felt vast or daunting. Each hospital implementing their program, each life touched by their work, was a testament to their relentless drive, their love, and their shared brilliance. Aurora Kennedy, ever the careful, controlled programmer, now initiated every intimate moment, allowing emotion and logic to coalesce into something fierce, tender, and unbreakable. Nerissa, the sun that had once broken through walls of steel and protocol, now shone softly beside her, knowing that the world had changed, and so had they. And in the quiet hum of code, the soft glow of monitors, and the warmth of skin pressed together, Aurora and Nerissa thrived, not just surviving, but living, loving, and saving lives together. Their hearts, once measured in beats per minute and data points, now pounded in sync, fearless, unrestrained, and utterly claimed. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe and like this video and follow me for more stories. You are always welcome here, and leave me a comment or a thumbs up, just letting me know if you like the story and would like more, or is there perhaps an idea that you would like to share or let me write for you.